Can you guys hear me on Zoom? Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. David Seibert. I've known David for about 11 years. David has a doctorate in cultural anthropology from the University of Arizona. And he's the founding executive director for Borderlands Restoration Network. David is now with Seibert Ecological Restoration LLC. And David's a poet, a restorationist, a humanitarian, and a horticulturalist. And I'm excited to introduce David because he's the one who's developed the restoration plan for here at Diamond Mountain, and specifically the Bear Gulch Restoration Watershed here at the center. And with that, here's David.
All right, thank you. Do I get to look at the slides as they come up? Oh, here we go. Yes, I do. All right. Everybody good, in good shape? Yeah, okay. So someone, I guess, will be changing the slides, and maybe I'll just say next each time, something like that. Next slide. So no, not yet. Sorry, last slide. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Caleb. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with him and many other people in Southern Arizona and all over the Southwest in many cases. In my experience, I've worked with a number of different tribes, especially on cultural resource protection, sacred site work, and generally very much enjoy working on places that people care very, very deeply about. And this is certainly one of those. So I was hired just to write a restoration plan for the area around Bear Spring, Bear Gulch. Looks like we have no Spanish sound. Is that what I'm seeing? Should I pause? This area where we're working and where Diamond Mountain Retreat Center is located is a highly contested, in many ways difficult landscape historically because of all of the different peoples that have moved through there, including Anglo settlers who displaced and made a very hard time for many of the indigenous people in the region, unfortunately, something that continues to this day. So as a cultural anthropologist or ecological anthropologist, combining people, human values, and place, how people value places, I was very intrigued with the opportunity to work with the Diamond Mountain Retreat Center people and to try to contribute to the healing of a place that has seen some very difficult moments in history regarding human interaction. So one of the foundations of my work and our work collectively is to try to provide opportunities for that healing, for people to engage or participate with the places they live, and to do it together so that restorative work, making places better, more healthy, can in turn improve human experiences and human relationships, so that these two things go hand in hand together, which is something that I've found for decades and enjoy participating in. So the next slide, please. I'll ask you just to read sort of the crux of what we're up against, what our challenges are, as put by a famous ecologist. Do you have the next slide? Thank you. Yeah. So please read over that briefly. So what I see expressed here in these words is sort of the crux or the core of the issue that people have with one another and with places. And the keys to solving some of our shared problems at small and large scales is to attend to relationships, our relationships to place, our relationships to one another. And I'm always very, very excited by my own belief that this is a choice. So we have in the middle of the slide, if we so choose. These are choices in how to behave with one another, choices in how to behave and participate with the places we live, or to work against them, to work against processes, work against the places we live, and to be destructive in ways that are not necessary. So the idea that these are choices, I think, is very, very powerful, because there are techniques, there are things that can be done that can prevent what might be a threat to us, which is the last word on the slide, is the harboring or the bringing about or the support of loneliness, which would be a very tragic way to exist and a way to be around and with one another. So in the next images, yeah, please go ahead. Thank you. We've got ways that we can go about this, and I'll read the bolded ones, right, in terms of restoration action, and hope not to get in your way of reading and interpreting. Think again in terms of relationships, right? People to places, animals to animals, right? That includes insects and plants, water and insects, plants and people, back and forth. If we tend to the processes and the habitats, we can stabilize. We can bring back resilience or strength in a landscape. We can reconnect in the middle there. Reconnect the food chains for pollinators, the relationships between the plants and the insects that depend on one another for survival, for reproduction. And human beings, people, being as powerful and as capable as we are, can help move these connections along, can help establish connections or re-establish, restore, right? Reconnect people and places and the different parts of a landscape that need to be connected for integrity or for basic function, which can provide for human beings in many, many different ways. And at the bottom, I highlighted community capacity building, because no one needs to do this alone. No one needs to be lonely in this work. And in fact, they would be less successful if they were. Community and relationships and capacity building at all scales, small and large, neighborhoods, towns, larger cities, entire countries, will be more powerful if people are working in concert right? Together to build and to share visions going forward. So then in the coming slides, I'll show examples of just an overview of Bear Gulch and the Diamond Mountain sort of map, and where we've just begun to work, and then several pictures of other places that I've worked that are very, very similar systems, similar problems, and similar solutions, similar responses by us that can heal those places. And it works over and over and over. So, okay, the next, please. Well, this I put up because I wanted to have a look at the larger landscape, the larger context, right, from way above. And as we all know, water will move, from high points to low, and it will follow certain pathways, much like animals do. It will follow the least resistance or the easy way as it moves down, but it does not have to unravel or destroy a landscape as it moves across, right? As the water hits the ground and moves across the ground, it does not have to take organic matter, right? Plants and animals, decaying matter that builds soils. That material does not have to leave the system. It can stay, it can be held in place. And the plants that are key to the linkage between people and place and animals and place habitats can be held in place, and the water and the good soil that we can hold will provide a bed or a system in which native plants can thrive, right? The plants that belong there can match again or continue to match the animals that depend upon them, and vice versa. So overall, this is very complex, right? Very, very complex, interrelated set of systems. We have roads, we have waterways or arroyos that flow and move the water from the bottom of the screen where the spring is. You see Bear Spring near the bottom there, marked by drainage 4. And then going up on the image is actually going down in elevation, downstream. So we look for places that we can work and have good effects with our small structures, sometimes much larger ones, but we always try to fit the structures to the place and to the problem, which is often a loss of soil, a loss of water, because it moves away too quickly. And then as a result, plants can no longer thrive, and animals will not be able to live there either. So in the next slides, I'll show some examples of conditions similar, if not identical, to those on the Diamond Mountain Retreat Center and in the Bear Spring and Bear Gulch area. Is this okay? Too fast? Okay. So 2 examples from similar parts, southern Arizona, both of them very close to Bear Gulch. The top 2 on the left, upper left, this is a before example when the structure is put in. On the right, after the structures are put in, you see the results. You get moisture, you'll get plants, you will extend the period of time that water is available for seeds to germinate or sprout and grow. And what's very important about the top two slides is the one on both the left and the right. You see the bare dirt all around, up above the green and to the left. That is degraded or harmed or hurt landscape that may recover if we put structures up there. But the key is that that is going to be brown and denuded and lacking in vegetation unless we do something. So a little bit of water goes a long way in these systems, right? And the key here is to build hundreds and hundreds of these structures together, linking to one another, right? And if you talk to people in wildlife who are interested in animals, in animal movement, you find out, you learn very quickly that these low cuts, like at Bear Mountain or at Bear Gulch, Bear Spring, these low cuts are extremely, very, very important for animals to move across the landscape, to hide in the vegetation or the rocks, and of course to eat the plants that come up. We used no seed here. There was no seed, there were no plants planted. It was simply holding the water for a brief period, slowing it down, let it soak in to the sides, and build another one and another one and another one. The bottom two examples are much more dramatic. Before on the left, after on the right. And this is the result of a much larger structure being put in at the cut, at that opening, that held sediment, held soil, earth, and therefore water, just for a brief period, let it soak in, right? Allow recovery to happen, and then let the water continue, right? You don't need to hold the water in a dam. You may want to, if you want that water for some reason, right? Dams and ponds and such. But perhaps you just want to slow the destruction, right? The erosion, the negative force for just a brief period and allow healing. It will happen. It happens over and over and over. And the next one, please. This is just to show that we use plans, we use accepted methods that can be, are written down. They're repeated over and over across the world. The same basic principles apply. In some places, it's better to put structures than in others. Those details come out in training sessions, in education sessions, on the ground, when we're working with people who are new, with youth, right? There are better and worse ways to put in the structures, but mainly what you need to do is put in the structures, right? So next, please. In this case, we see multiple structures, very new, very recent. I like this slide because we had a large project, many thousands of hectares, acres, on a large ranch in southern Arizona, where we got funded to put in hundreds and hundreds of structures. Well, they got a wildfire, right, from lightning. Burned off the vegetation immediately, which is natural. What's also natural, but not desirable, is for all the soil to erode, for all the earth and the organic matter to wash away. So very quickly, because we had a team, we had a crew of people working, building in this location, we were able to move them in right after the fire and have them build structures in the burned area before the rains came and washed the soil away. So this has been a dream of mine for a very long time, and it's happening through Borderlands and many others, is to have work crews, to have availability for us to quickly respond to fires or floods with structures like this before things get worse, right? Same concept as fighting wildfires, only in this case, we're fighting erosion, degradation over time, right? So that ability to act quickly, I think, is key, and it can be done. It can be done slowly as well. There's lots of places to work, but the more we coordinate, the more effective we'll be. And the next one, please. This is another burned area. Suffered a severe fire, very hot, due to too much vegetation. It had not burned for a long time. So we got a contract to work with some prison inmates, a forestry crew that is accustomed to working in the forest. And we trained them to build structures. And here you can see from the cut, you see the sheer edges, how sharp they are, straight up and down. That shows a very fast, erosive flush of water that cuts the channel deeper over time. And so this is very raw, it's very new. So we chose dozens, many cuts like this to build our structures. You can see two in the top middle, one towards the bottom. You can see sediment captured in between. Instead of flushing out of the system, it's held in place. And then I enjoy seeing the pool, the small wet pool of mud below the last. So in this case, the water is moving from the top of the picture towards us, down to the bottom. When the structures hold soil, they create moisture, they hold moisture, and many benefits. They can make small pools for wildlife. Extremely important in dry lands. So the next one, please. Here's another extremely healthy, dense vegetation on a ranch where I showed you we had done the work with fire, and a terrible cut, very common, and also exists at Bear Gulch. Next, please. This is the cut. The water is moving from top left down to the bottom right. So it flows over that edge, flows over the edge, and the soil disappears as the water moves over. It's captured, thrown out of the system. So we can build special structures to stop that. Next, please. This is a schematic. This is a model, again, of the pool that we will build. You'll see next, and then structures below that work together. Next, please. This is the same cut, only with rock that is protecting it and stopping the erosive force, right? Next. Another view of the same, and next, please. Here's a view from inside it. See, there's a hard space now for the water to go over the edge, but also to hit more rock instead of earth. the energy or the force of the water goes down, and the water is allowed to move on, but it does not take all of the good vegetation and soil with it. It's held. So we stop that. Next, please. This is another smaller cut right below the last one. Same technique, same results. This is very solid and will be a part of the landscape, hopefully forever, including if there's a fire that would take the vegetation away. Now this landscape is stronger against any future fires. Next, please. In this case, we have a stream up above Patagonia, which is very, very powerful in many, many ways. And the owners of the property that live off to the right were concerned about a small spring just off the screen to the right that you can't see as the water comes around the corner towards us from top to bottom. We built posts called post veins, right? Structures that are buried in the ground, perhaps 1 to 2 meters deep. The water will come from left to right. It will try to make it around the corner, and instead of taking away the soil on the corner, soil will build up. So it will become stronger as the river continues to move as it needs to move, as water needs to move out of the system. It did not have to destroy the bank, did not have to destroy the side. So we put up weirs or posts to capture it and let the water move on. Next one. This is a smaller example of the same idea. Here the water is flowing again from top to bottom in the picture, and the small posts are stuck in the ground, right? They're woven, so they capture debris, and you can see the soil is higher above than below. And the owner here was very excited about the result and wants to build more, in part because of the habitat, the animals, insects, plants that will stay, but it also helps him have a well that he can rely on. His water is going to permeate, it's going to get into the ground in a more reliable way for himself and for everyone downstream, which is a very, very important principle, is that this work benefits the immediate location and those downstream by providing more steady or more predictable flows of water and availability of water. Next one, please. And sometimes people use very interesting techniques, many of which are the same as the posts that we saw. In this case, someone long ago decided to use old cars to try to block the force of the water against the bank. This one was probably effective. It's hard to tell. It may have been overkill or unnecessary, but I always appreciate the creativity of what people are, what they do when they're trying to face a common problem. Sometimes it's tires, sometimes it's old washing machines, branches, trash. But the key when we do our training sessions is, of course, it's best not to build with toxic or harmful materials. But if you're using rocks or other relatively harmless materials, the key is that you're building something, right? You're building something that fits together like blocks, right? You have a structure in mind, like the pictures I showed you, and all the parts fit together. They're not just thrown in with hope. You actually build things. And then each of those pieces or structures that you build is connected to another one and connected to another one, in the same way that we are as human beings, if we so choose to be. Next one, please. This is just an example of the mountains immediately north of immediately south of Diamond Mountain, the Chiricahua Mountains, where many, many large structures have been built. And the key lesson here is that building these structures can reduce the severity, can reduce how bad wildfires are, because we know fires are going to come. But if we can build structures that increase moisture levels and increase the plant's ability to protect themselves or to come back, we can maintain landscapes and all their complexity without having a fire come through and resulting in only one or two species, or in some cases, no species at all. Because many fire specialists, fire scientists, are seeing fire behavior and fire scale or scope like we have never recorded in human history. And that's terrifying, as we know from the news all over the world. So the more we can do to strengthen our landscapes in many different ways, the better off perhaps we will be. But to try is a major part of restoration. Okay, next one, please. This is an example. It just reminds me of some great work that was done in the same area by also Valère Clark with Cuenca Los Ojos, similar to the last slide with the fire. Here, the lesson is that we can bring back streams, we can bring back rivers and ponds and make them quite beautiful, quite appealing to our eyes. But one of our primary lessons here was that even building the structures and bringing back the water might be very pleasing to us as people. We see this and we think it's a wonderful place to be, to have lunch, to swim, etc. But what we found, what Borderlands found and partners, right when we started the organization, was that scientists had found that in this case, perhaps, or some very nearby, hummingbirds were migrating north, building nests, and having young, right, laying eggs that hatched. But the food chain that we talked about earlier, the link between the plants and the animals had been broken. The plants that supported the hummingbirds best, you might think that they are here, but the scientists found that there were not enough. Those plants had dropped out of the system. They had died because the stream cut too low, and the plants were literally left up on the banks, on the sides, without an ability to get to water. And so this is just an example of a very real threat in our landscapes, is the dewatering or the downcutting, like we saw in the fire example, of situations getting worse and worse over time, cutting deeper and deeper and deeper, unless we build structures and do the right things to hold them in place, and then to get the water to seep into the sides. Now, in many cases, as you'll learn later through Borderlands and other groups, we'll collect seeds from places and literally plant the plants or the seeds back into these landscapes. Because in some cases, I'm telling you here, providing the water might not be enough if the seeds are gone, right? There might need to be the human hand, right? A human intervention to get the plants back into the place now that they have water. So that can be another component of our work. In many cases, build structures, hold water, stop erosion. You're probably doing a very good thing, many good things. But depending on your goals and the species that were there or could be there, maybe need to be there to complete their life cycle, it might not be enough. You might need to get the plants back to the places. And of course, to pick spots carefully, because there's a lot of work to be done. Infinite, perhaps. Okay, next one. Just an example here of how we use science, USGS in particular, the United States Geological Survey. They have been great partners in our work. And the key here is that these scientists, hydrologists, geologists, and others can use our projects where we build to study, to gather data, to write articles, scientific articles, and to put out information to the public as part of their jobs. So in many ways, they look forward to our projects. And we, who do the projects on the ground, look forward to getting information from them about the best places to work, the most in need, the most threatened places to work. And so the relationships go back and forth in that way, such that the scientists don't need to build structures or train youth groups or gather volunteers or figure all of those things out. But Borderlands and others don't need to be the federal scientists either. They have different roles to play. They're very complementary, right? Very collaborative and community-based across a massive, massive scale. So I enjoy remembering the mutually supportive way that we go about our work, with appropriate or the right folks doing the things that they love and contributing to something much, much larger together. Okay, the next one, please. Yeah, this is just a collage of pictures, doing some monitoring of wildlife in the upper left. There's Valera Clark in the white, I guess. She has built thousands of structures and some very, very large ones, including with wire and rock, which we have built as well, just having a larger impact on the land. The plant part of it, as I said, is a very, very big part. You'll learn more about that later. It's fun to remember in the upper right corner. That's actually an indoor swimming pool that Valera Clark suggested we use as a greenhouse for growing plants in the very early days of Borderlands, when we were still trying to build our infrastructure, trying to build our relationships. We had no office. We had nothing except vehicles and computers and some ideas. And there in the bottom, that's old friend of mine, Gooch Goodwin, who was always contributing on the wildlife side of things, getting out in the field and monitoring, coming back with information, trying to contribute that piece of it to our shared work. He loved it very much. Okay, next one, please. Just another example in terms of the love of places and the love of what can result from this work, what can come about from it. This is just a simple picture I took up on the Hopi Reservation, Native American indigenous tribe I've worked with for many, many years. I helped train and start a youth program up there. And it just means everything to the folks up there to have remnant peach trees. This is a peach tree that they planted and then built the rock infrastructure around it to capture water, slow it down, try to keep it in place as it came down the hillside, right? Rather than leave the tree standing alone on its own. They were very intrigued and very, very, very excited to build around this tree because they used the peaches in their ceremonies, in their spiritual ceremonies. So very simple, very easy in a sense, way to help a landscape, to help plants. But in many cases, what we do has extremely strong cultural significance as well. And that's a very powerful story to tell and to carry wherever you go in your work, any culture. The next one, please. Yeah, this is right outside of Patagonia, where Borderlands Restoration started. This is, I believe, the youth crew that works every summer. Caleb Weaver probably has told you about that, or he will soon at this summit. Many hands, many people can get a lot of work done in a short period of time, and they can do a lot of good. And it's important to note that a lot of pride, a lot of strength comes from people doing this work. And as I said before, not doing it alone, that's possible, of course, but doing it together and learning skills that they can take to other parts of their life, or to participate in restoration in a large sense. There are many, many different components to restoration, right? The scientific, the plants, the animals, all of it. So incredible program that Caleb has developed over years. It's really, really highly regarded throughout the Southwest. It's a remarkable achievement that is recurring every summer, hiring youth crews, because as I've said, there are always places to work, right? We will never run out of things to do. We have to pick the ones that we can do, or that are the most urgent, that are available to our students or to our staff, and get to work. There's plenty for all. It has a very strong economic component to it. It's people earning a living, taking care of the places that they live, or that they value for any reason, any cultural reason, personal reason. So. All right, next one, please. Here's another example of Caleb's work. The scale comes down, right? We go from a much larger scale across miles and miles to a very small scale where the same lessons are taught. This is work that Caleb and some students did at the school, where they put in the rock infrastructure where there was nothing, pond, the right plants, incorporate that, build it into the school, the teachers, what they teach. I'm working on a similar project in Mexico right now. It's very, very exciting. The town is thrilled that people are taking action and they want to be a part of it automatically. So very, very gratifying, very good feeling. So, and the next one, please. This might be, oh yeah, this is, yeah, collaboration, networking. Remember we talked about food chains, right? The chains, the links, all the pieces that go together. People in chains, people setting themselves up to succeed by being linked to one another, right? And linked to a landscape at the same time. Here they're moving rocks to a location and having a lot of fun. And then next slide, please. The youth group again, yeah, they have never, or I should say, I'm always surprised, very happily surprised at how much pride people take in their work, how energized or satisfied that young people are in being able to do this kind of thing that they maybe did not think was possible. In part because when they build structures like this and it rains, you can see the results immediately. Often after only one rain, you will see results. You will see sediment, you'll see seedlings start to come up, and it just, you feel like you've accomplished something. It's not abstract, it's not way, way over there or just on a computer screen, but right here in front of you with your hands. You can build things that matter. And next one, I believe that's the end of it. Yes. So thank you all. I appreciate the chance to talk and hope it wasn't too fast or confusing.
Thank you so much, David. That was incredible.
Oh.
Any questions from the audience here in Diamond Mountain? Please, Karin, come up and ask.
Well, thank you everyone for making this amazing summit possible. It's just unbelievable. And David, thank you for all of your effort you've contributed to the land here at Diamond Mountain. Question regarding the two grasslands restoration of those huge cuts that you lined with a lot of rocks. Did you import those by truck from another location?
We did. That's always an issue. In the Chiricahua Mountains, there's more rock than anyone knows what to do with, often. And we found the same at Bear Spring and in Bear Gulch. A lot of rock to work with. The key there is to not compromise or hurt the landscape by moving rock from one place where it's working to another place. But often you need to just rearrange the rocks that are already there. But it's a very difficult issue in other places like that ranch and where we saw the bare dirt. Yeah, maybe you're referring to the other one as well. We have to often buy rock, and that has to be calculated and in a grant and funded, and funders will pay for that. Finding it can be difficult. In many cases, we have literally purchased rock from a landfill that was being expanded in Huachuca City. So, you know, other options are to purchase rock from a mine, and it gets political very quickly in terms of whether or not that's what any one person or a group wants to do. But it can be difficult, yeah, to find the material. Caleb has also spearheaded working with wood, though, on the ground. dead wood or even live wood that can be pruned from trees. So that's not impossible, you know, working with, but if you have large systems, high energy, the smaller wood would not work so well, probably, unless you put the structures very close together. So that's a tough one. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes, please.
David, the thing that you mentioned that really inspired me was you this line you said with the extinction of relationships. And as soon as I've been kind of pondering that as you've gone through your talk, and I was just wondering if you could maybe get a little more in depth on that in terms of, in this specific cases with the watershed, what relationships in specific are you noticing? What is the loneliness? Like, how would you define those things?
Yeah, that's a really, really good one. I guess it's, you know, conceptual or philosophical. I would like to hear your thoughts or others' thoughts as well. But I just worry, or I guess, you know, the concept strikes me in a certain way because of, in part because of how people have chosen to spend their time, and there seems to be a lot of isolation or a lot of encouragement to be isolated, and it's easy to point to social media and these kinds of things, but it just seems that we have an exceedingly busy Earth right now. We have exceedingly busy communities, and a lot of noise and chatter, but I don't know how much it's contributing to us building strong relationships to one another, or to place. Oh, sorry. In the field, I mean, the disconnects are easy to see. You know, when you can see that there's a cut or a channel, and you see the plants high and dry on the edges, right? Their roots are reaching down, they're dying. You see them dying, and you know that the water used to flow across the landscape and nourish all of those plants. It can no longer do that because of the deep cuts, right? The water will follow that lower path, and the upper surfaces will be left dry, and they'll also be denuded. They'll be organic matter will be taken away from them. So we talk about, you know, plants being disconnected from their water source, and even a channel, a cut or an arroyo, being disconnected from the floodplain, right? Where water would flow across the top. The disconnect now is that there's a top and a bottom where there wasn't before. And those things, if they're not checked, if we don't build structures, relationships, shared knowledge, they won't just heal themselves. I don't know to what extent that's possible, you know, with human relationships, but I fear that we're set up to make it easier, at least, to choose to be apart. When we, you know, historically didn't. There was a more of a need, perhaps, to work together because it was a matter of survival. And for better or worse, perhaps it's easy to insulate ourselves from one another, and to insulate ourselves from the landscapes that support us, if we have the means, if we have the walls or the money. And that lack of connectivity, I think, will be an impoverishment. It would be something sad that does not need to happen. And if nothing else, perhaps leads to just lower quality, lower quality of life. As an anthropologist, one of my favorite questions to ask the people I worked with, I would ask scientists, researchers, ranchers. As a student, when I was an anthropology student, I would ask, why do you care? Why keep endangered species alive? Why do the work to try to maintain, a species of plant, or to try to keep an animal that's dwindling in numbers? Why try to keep that in place? Why try to hold that? And that becomes maybe a spiritual or cosmological question, but one of the best answers I think I've ever had is that there's no way to know the result of letting something like that drop out. There's no way to know how things will be if there's a loss. And so, as the powerful beings that we are in so many ways, perhaps it's best to try to hold things, to try to gather them and keep them in place, and continuously talk about, whether our actions are positive or negative, never being certain that we're always right, but to try to hold until we can learn more, might be a good thing to do. I don't know for certain, but you try to talk to somebody halfway around the world about what would happen if all the polar bears were gone. I don't know if they would feel it in some ways, but what would that result in? How do we measure that loss? And should we not try to prevent it? Should we not try to hold until maybe we can be more sure? I don't know. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going off a bit there, but yeah, I think a lot of people who work in these areas are intent on keeping relationships and processes intact, and like doctors, perhaps trying to start with the idea of doing no harm, right? Maybe we can do some good, but let's try to be as harmless as possible in every way we can. Even as, I drive an enormous truck and I'm talking to you on a toxic laptop, hopefully making other choices that are a little better. But I appreciate that question very much. That's a big one. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hearing you talk about restoration for me is grounding. It's part of what made me get into this work. So thank you. And thanks for your direction with Bear Gulch as well. It's been fun working so far. We toured the site today with the crew, and tomorrow we're gonna get into it. So tomorrow I also want to announce who our speakers are going to be. So once again, there's 2 speakers as part of the program at 11:30. Rudy Poe has an MLA Masters in Landscape Architecture. His permaculture design certificate with Jeff Lawton and the Sonoran Permaculture Guild on humans and nature working together. And then at 3 p.m. Arizona time, we've got Perrin McNellis, my colleague at Borderlands Restoration Network. She's the Native Plant Program Manager. and she's going to be presenting on stewarding native seeds here in the southwestern US. And just once again, thanks to Diamond Mountain. I just was thinking about this question about that David was talking about, coming together, trying to bring us together in this time where it's hard to, so easy to stay apart, and big shout out to Diamond Mountain for bringing us all together to do this work together. So thank you.
Yes, many thanks. Looking forward to more. See what we can do.
Thank you, dear translators. Thank you, dear volunteers here in Diamond Mountain. Thank you to all the tech and recording. Thank you, Nick, for making it possible here. And see you tomorrow at 11:30, same Zoom link. And we have the speaker here, Rudy. He asked already 2 questions, so you already know him. See you tomorrow with Rudy at 11:30. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Already off. Sorry, too late.
Hmm?